Happy Sunday, football fans. Welcome into Four Verts, an NFL and college football show hosted by me, Harrison Graham. Hopefully you're enjoying all of the NFL action. Appreciate you taking 10, 15 minutes to talk a little college football with me. The first college football playoff rankings for this year come out on Tuesday, new 12-team playoff system. So what I'm going to do is take my guess, predict what the initial top 12 rankings will be from the playoff committee this Tuesday. Should be very, very fascinating to see what that looks like. In the meantime, shout out your favorite team down in the comment section below, which university, which college you represent. And if you don't have a favorite team, then maybe shout out some of your favorite players in college football. We'll be reading the comments down below. All right, some teams just outside of the top 12, not necessarily in any order. Iowa State only has one loss, just like SMU. I think both would have an argument for the top 12, but tough to lose at home to Texas Tech yesterday if you're Iowa State. Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M, 3 two-loss SEC teams, certainly still in the playoff mix, but their margin for error has thinned out. And I mentioned SMU. I would make an argument for top 12, but again, I'm basing this top 12 on what I think the committee will do, not solely on what I would do. I'm going to fall Penn State all the way to number 12, and I say fall. This is the playoff committee's first ranking, so they're not really basing it off of anything else, at least in theory. They're not supposed to. They don't have a signature win. They just lost to Ohio State at home. A little bit of a typo there, but yet again, James Franklin can't get over the hump in these big matchups. Like, Illinois is the best win. It's just not that inspiring to me. Like, to me, what is the difference between them and Iowa State? Both have one loss. Neither really have a signature win. At least Iowa State beat Iowa, who's 6-3 and is a good non-conference win. But I think Penn State will be in the top 12, and with 0 signature games remaining, if they win out, they're probably going to be in the college football playoff. Number 11, the Boise State Broncos at 7-1. Solid wins against UNLV and Washington State. Just a 3-point loss to Oregon, who, stay tuned, I've got them very, very high in my rankings. You can probably guess where. And honestly outplayed the Ducks in that game. They gave up 2 kickoff return touchdowns. Otherwise, the Broncos are probably undefeated. I think they are the heavy favorite to get the Group of 5 spot in the college football playoff, which is awesome because running back Ashton Jeanty in the CFP is something we all want to see. At number 10, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They're 8-1. It's hard to figure out what to do with them. They have a really good win at Texas A&M all the way back in week 1. Have easily the worst loss among really any team that's in the top 25. Northern Illinois at home. It'd be one thing if Northern Illinois was running through the MAC. They're 4-4. They've lost 2 in a row. They're terrible. And you lost that game. Like, in the old playoff system, 4-team, like, that would be a disqualifier for me. That would be like, I don't care what you do the rest of the season, you can't get in. But in a 12-team playoff, good win on the road against a ranked SEC opponent. I've got them at number 10. They've got Army in a few weeks, November 23rd. I think I mentioned that game might be this week. I think it's actually in a few weeks. So that would be another, I don't want to say signature win because it is Army, but it would be a good win as the Black Knights are undefeated. All right, at number 9, Alabama. Tough to figure out where they're at. I personally probably would not have them that high. Outside of the first half against Georgia, they've kind of been underwhelming most of this season, if we're being completely honest, but they did win that game against Georgia. They lost at Vandy, in which they were completely outplayed. They lost at Tennessee, in which they were outplayed. Play at LSU next week. That's kind of an elimination game in my eyes. Winner of that game's in a good spot. Loser needs a lot of help to get back into the mix with 3 losses, so stay tuned. Should be a big one. All right, number 8, Indiana. Historically, the College Football Playoff Committee, with these undefeated teams that don't really have a signature or a ranked win, they rank them lower early on here. So, like, I think there will be a lot of public outcry. How is Indiana behind this SEC team, that SEC, whatever? I think they'll be somewhere between 7 and 10. But if you're the Hoosiers, just keep plugging away. Michigan next week, take care of business at Ohio State November 23rd. If Indiana wins all the remaining games except for Ohio State, but is at least competitive in that game, they're probably going to get into the playoff at 11-1. Number 7, Miami, 9-0. Similar, 0 signature wins. Now, I think they're more aesthetically pleasing than Indiana, and what I mean by that is they have a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback in Cam Ward. They have an NFL receiver in Xavier Restrepo. They have a ton of talent on both sides of the ball. Damian Martinez at running back's a really good player. but their schedule just hasn't been difficult. At Georgia Tech versus Wake, at Syracuse, their remaining schedule, I expect them to run the table here and get to 12-0. What's going to be interesting is if Miami and SMU win out. Say Miami's 12-0, SMU's 11-1, and SMU beats Miami in the ACC title game. Does Miami still get in at 12-1? They would have 0 ranked wins. In a 12-team system, you think they would, but I'm not sure they actually would. It's going to be really interesting to see how the committee views the Canes here on Thursday. Do you want a reaction to Tuesday's CFP rankings? It's a busy day. A lot of things going on, NFL trade deadline and this little thing called the presidential election. So there's going to be a lot going on. We're going to be busy here at work with NFL trade deadline stuff. But I could squeeze it in if you guys want it. If we get 25 new subscribers, a lot of more college football fans on this channel, I'll react to the playoff rankings here on this channel. If not, probably just do something on Wednesday for it. So you guys let me know. Prove it to me by subscribing if you want that to happen. All right, number 6, BYU. I like the Cougars. They're not the most talented team. They're not going to blow out a lot of teams, but they just find ways to win. And that win at SMU is one of the better non-con wins in college football, the way it's aged over the last several weeks. They have a win over Kansas State at home as well. They blew them out. They don't have any ranked opponents left on the schedule, so they can't really secure any more signature wins until the Big 12 championship game. But if they win out or at least go 3-1 the rest of the way, they're pretty safe to get to Arlington and get to the Big 12 title game. Kind of like the ACC, if BYU wins out and say Iowa State wins out, goes 11-1, BYU's 12-0, and Iowa State or Colorado, if they get there, beats BYU, would BYU still get in at 12-1? They'd have a compelling argument because they have 2 really good wins there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, Tennessee, I've got them at number 5, 7-1. You know, they kind of mess around in some of these games. They were farting around with Kentucky for a half yesterday before pulling away. They do have a win over Alabama. They lost at Arkansas, which isn't an awful loss, but certainly not a great loss. They played Georgia in a couple of weeks. The winner of that game, I would say, is a borderline lock to make the college football playoff, would also be alive to get to the SEC championship game. The loser isn't out, as it would likely just be each team's second loss, but then your margin for error thins out a little bit, so certainly a big game for the Vols coming up. Number 4, the Texas Longhorns. They don't really have like a top signature win at Vandy. I put Michigan in there because I give them credit for scheduling that game and blowing them out on the road. Clearly Michigan's pretty bad, but I think they deserve some credit for playing that game out of conference. Got blown out versus Georgia at home. Not a great look considering Georgia's been very up and down. They play at Texas A&M November 30th, and with A&M losing yesterday, that becomes a borderline must-win for the Aggies, so that's a big one coming up in a few weeks. They've got Arkansas on the road in a couple of weeks as well. They've been very hit and miss, but Horns in a good position if they can win at least 3 out of their final 4. Number 3, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Again, not a dominant team, and I think that's the kind of the theme of this season, and I've said this a couple of times. I think when the 12-team playoff is set, 6, 7, maybe even 8 teams are going to feel like they could make a run. I've got the Buckeyes at number 3. They obviously beat Penn State yesterday on the road. They lost at Oregon. Play at Indiana November 23rd. We'll see how the committee views Indiana, like I said, even though they're undefeated. But Buckeyes in a good position. If they beat Indiana, they're basically a lock to make the playoff. Okay, number 2, the Georgia Bulldogs. Couple of good wins. At Texas is a great win. I know Clemson lost yesterday, but that's a good non-conference win. Did lose at Bama, but I think looking back, like by the end of the game, don't we all think Georgia was the better team? That's how I feel. Now, you've got this Carson Beck issue where he's just throwing picks left and right. I think if you're Kirby Smart, you got to sit him down and just say, dude, just be a game manager. Like, I get you're trying to get drafted, all that stuff, rebuild your stock. You got to just take care of the ball because if he does that, they're going to be tough to beat. They still have Ole Miss. They still have Tennessee, so they got tough games coming up, but Georgia's righted the ship since the first half of that Bama game. All right, number 1, the Oregon Ducks. I think they have the best combination of resume, obviously record as well. win over Ohio State. They beat Boise State as well, even though took a little bit of special teams luck to get it. And they're one of 4 unbeaten Power 4 teams. So unlike Miami and Indiana, they have beaten ranked opponents in Ohio State and Boise State. So good for the Ducks. They're in a good spot. Dylan Gabriel, kind of late push to be a Heisman finalist, perhaps. And they have 0 ranked opponents left on the schedule. So barring a collapse, they are a lock to be a college football playoff team and a borderline lock to be in the Big Ten title game. All right, who do you guys think is the best team in the country? Like, I think most of us would agree Oregon should be ranked number 1, but do you think they're actually the best team in the country? Let me know in the comment section down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It is 4 Verts here. Hosted by me, yours truly, Harrison Graham. And if you want more playoff reaction for Tuesday, let's get 25 new subscribers here on today's show.